Nathan Cole's hands were shaking when he unfolded the letter. The paper was thin, stained with something dark. Blood or mud, he couldn't tell. 3 children stood behind him in the snow, barefoot, shivering, the youngest boy burning with fever in his sister's arms. The oldest girl watched him with eyes no child should have.
"Papa said you'd keep us safe," she whispered.
Nathan read the letter once, then again. Then his knees hit the frozen ground, and he pressed the paper to his chest like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to my channel and follow along until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The knock came 3 times. Sharp, deliberate. Like someone who'd been taught that knocking mattered. Nathan Cole set his coffee down and listened. Nobody knocked on his door. Not anymore. Not since Ellen died 5 winters ago, and he'd stopped answering the world. He wiped his hands on his shirt and crossed the room slowly, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. When he opened the door, the cold hit him first. Then he saw them. 3 children, standing on his porch in the snow. The oldest was a girl, maybe 10. She stood in front of the other 2 like a shield, her jaw set, her eyes fixed on him. Her dress was torn at the hem, soaked through, and her boots, if you could still call them boots, were split at the seams. Her hair hung in dark red tangles across her face, and her hands were raw, cracked from the cold. Behind her, a smaller girl, maybe 6, clutched a rag doll to her chest with both arms. She didn't look up, didn't move, just stood there trembling, pressed against her sister's back. And in the oldest girl's arms, a boy, 4 years old at most. His face was flushed, his breathing shallow and ragged, and his small body shook with a cough that sounded like it came from somewhere deep and broken. Nathan stared at them. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The oldest girl spoke first. "You Calloway? I mean, Cole. Nathan Cole?" Her voice was small but steady, like a match that refused to go out in the wind. "I am." "My papa said to find you. He said if something happened, we should come here." Nathan's jaw tightened. He looked past them, scanning the white emptiness that stretched in every direction. No horse, no wagon, no tracks except the ones they'd left in the snow, already filling in. "Where's your papa?" The girl's lips pressed together. She didn't answer. Instead, she shifted the boy in her arms, reached into the pocket of her dress, and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She held it out to him with both hands. The smaller girl whimpered behind her. Nathan took it carefully. The cloth was stained, dark in places, frozen stiff. He unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a boot, a man's boot, worn leather, the sole cracked clean through, and tucked inside, folded tight, was a piece of paper. "This letter was in Papa's boot," the girl said. Her voice cracked. She pressed her lips together hard, trying to hold it. Then it broke. He told me to bring it to you if he didn't come back." The boy in her arms coughed again, a wet, rattling sound. The smaller girl buried her face in her sister's dress and started to cry, soft and quiet, like she'd learned that loud crying didn't help. Nathan's throat went dry. He looked at the boot, then at the letter, then at the 3 children standing in the snow. "What's your name?" he asked. Clara Dawson." "And them?" "My sister Lily, she's 6, and my brother Jamie, he's 4. He's sick. He's been sick since the 2nd day." "2nd day of what?" "Walking." Nathan's eyes went to her feet, the blisters on her heels, the blood on the snow behind her. "How far did you walk?" 4 days, Maybe 5. I lost count. In this weather? Alone? She nodded. Jamie coughed again, harder this time, and Clara tightened her grip on him. Her arms were shaking, not from the cold, but from carrying him for miles. "Can we come in?" she asked. "Please, Jamie needs to get warm." Nathan stepped aside. "Come in, all of you, now." Clara moved past him, quick and careful. Lily followed, her eyes on the floor, the rag doll crushed against her chest. Nathan shut the door against the wind and moved to the fireplace. The fire had burned low. He grabbed logs and built it back up, fast, hands working from memory. "Set him here," Nathan said, pulling a blanket off the chair and laying it by the fire. Clara knelt down and laid Jamie on the blanket. The boy's eyes were half closed, his skin hot to the touch. His breathing came in short, sharp gasps.
How long has he been like this?
Nathan asked. Started coughing the second night. By the third day, he couldn't walk. I carried him. Nathan looked at her. This 10-year-old girl who'd carried a 4-year-old through a Wyoming blizzard for 2 days. "You carried him?" "He's my brother." She said it like it explained everything. And maybe it did. Nathan grabbed another blanket and wrapped it around Lily, who hadn't said a word. She sat by the fire, rocking slightly, holding the rag doll. Her eyes were glassy, distant, the look of a child who'd seen something no child should see. "Lily," Nathan said gently, "you hungry?" She didn't answer, didn't look up. "She doesn't talk much," Clara said. "Not since that night." "What night?" Clara's face tightened. "The night they came." Nathan didn't push it, not yet. He went to the kitchen, heated water, brought back cups. Clara drank hers in long gulps. Lily held hers, but didn't drink. Nathan dipped a cloth in warm water and pressed it to Jamie's forehead. The boy stirred, opened his eyes, blue, bright blue, and looked up at Nathan. "Mama?" Jamie whispered. Clara's face crumbled. She looked away. "No, son," Nathan said quietly. "Not Mama. But you're safe." Jamie's eyes closed again. Nathan sat back on his heels, then reached for the boot on the floor. He pulled the letter out and unfolded it. The paper was thin, creased 100 times. The handwriting was rough, slanted, written in haste. He read it. "Nathan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't have time to explain everything, but I need you to know. These children are mine. Clara, Lily, and Jamie. Their mother died 2 winters ago, and I've been raising them alone. I got into debt with a man named Garrett Wade. I borrowed money for Sarah's medicine, but it wasn't enough. She died anyway. And now Wade wants more than I owed. He wants the land, the house, everything. He's coming for me. And when he does, he'll come for them too. I know I have no right to ask you this. We haven't spoken in 15 years, and you owe me nothing. But I'm asking anyway. Keep them safe, please. You're the only man I trust. William Dawson. Nathan read it twice, then the third time. His hands were shaking. William Dawson. The name hit him like a fist to the chest. He hadn't heard it in 15 years, hadn't let himself think it. Will Dawson had been a cavalry scout during the war. They'd ridden together through hell, night raids, ambushes, supply runs through enemy lines. The kind of days where you trusted the man next to you with your life because you had no other choice. And Will had saved Nathan's. Outside a settlement called Cutter's Ridge, a night ambush gone wrong. Gunfire from every direction. Nathan took shrapnel to the shoulder and went down. Will came back for him, dragged him 300 yards through mud and blood, while bullets tore the air around them. Will took a bullet in the leg, shattered his knee, left him with a limp that would never heal. They were evacuated separately. Will was discharged, sent home with a medal and nothing else. Nathan recovered, finished his service, and went west. He never wrote, never visited, never once tried to find the man who'd saved his life. And now Will was dead, and his 3 children were shivering on Nathan's floor. Nathan folded the letter and looked at Clara. She was watching him, waiting. "Your papa," Nathan said carefully. "He didn't come back." She shook her head. Her eyes were dry, but her chin trembled. "They came at night," Clara said. 3 men on horses. Papa heard them coming. He woke me up and told me to take Lily and Jamie to the root cellar. He said, 'Don't come out, no matter what.'" "And you didn't?" "No, sir. I held Jamie's mouth so he wouldn't cry. Lily covered her ears." Clara's voice was flat, like she was telling someone else's story. "I heard shouting, Papa yelling, then gunshots, 2 of them. Then it got quiet." "How long did you wait?" "Till morning. When I came out, the house was burning. Papa's horse was gone. I found—" She stopped, swallowed. "I found his boot by the creek. Just the one. The letter was inside." "Just the boot?" "Yes, sir. I looked everywhere. But there was only snow and blood and—" Her voice broke. She pressed her hand over her mouth and turned away. Nathan gave her a moment. Then he asked, "You know who these men were? The ones who came?" Clara nodded. "I heard Papa say a name. Wade. Garrett Wade." Nathan's blood went cold. Garrett Wade. If that name was true, this wasn't about debt. This was about land, power, and the man who believed he owned everything he touched. Nathan had heard stories about Wade. Everyone in Wyoming Territory had. He ran the mining operations along the northern range, backed by railroad money from back east. He loaned money to desperate homesteaders, then bled them dry with interest they could never pay. When they defaulted, he took their land. When they fought back, he sent men. Men who didn't ask questions. Men who didn't leave witnesses. "Clara," Nathan said, "these men, Wade's men, did they see you? Did they know about you and your brother and sister?" Clara shook her head. "I don't think so. Papa never brought us to town. He kept us hidden, said it was safer." "Your papa was smart." "My papa's dead." The words hung in the air. Nathan didn't have an answer for them. He looked at Jamie, still sleeping by the fire, his breathing a little easier now. He looked at Lily, sitting motionless, staring at nothing. He looked at Clara, 10 years old, standing in a stranger's house, holding herself together by pure will. "You'll stay here," Nathan said. "All of you. Long as you need." Clara's shoulders dropped. Not relief exactly. More like the weight shifted, just enough to let her breathe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The wind was picking up, pushing drifts against the fence posts. The world was white and empty and cold. But somewhere out there, Garrett Wade's men were looking for something. And sooner or later, they'd hear about 3 children who'd walk through a blizzard to find a rancher named Nathan Cole. Nathan turned back to Clara. "One more thing. Your papa. Did he ever mention what Wade really wanted? The land, the house. Was there something else?" Clara hesitated. "Papa said, he said there was something under the land. Something Wade wanted. He said that's why Wade wouldn't let the debt go. It was never about the money." Nathan's jaw tightened. That changed things. If Wade wanted the land for what was underneath it, mineral rights maybe, or a railroad easement, then this wasn't going to stop. Wade would keep coming, and he wouldn't care who was in the way. Your papa have any papers? Deeds, contracts, anything?
He had a tin box. He kept it buried behind the barn.
Was it still there when you left?
I don't know. The barn was burning too.
Nathan closed his eyes, breathed slow. When he opened them, Clara was still watching him, steady and patient, like a girl who'd learned that panicking didn't help. We're going to figure this out, Nathan said. But first, we need to get your brother well. And we need to keep you all out of sight. Can you do that? Stay inside? Stay quiet?
We've been doing that our whole lives, Clara said.
Nathan nodded. Something in his chest cracked, just a little, at the way she said it. Like hiding was normal. Like being invisible was how you survived. That night, Nathan set Clara and Lily up in the back room on blankets by a small stove. He kept Jamie by the fire in the main room, checking on him every hour. The boy's fever was high but steady. Nathan made broth, spooned it into Jamie's mouth, wiped his forehead with cool cloths. Around midnight, Clara appeared in the doorway. "Can't sleep?" Nathan asked.
No, sir.
"It's Nathan, or Nate. You don't have to call me sir." She sat down across from him, pulling her knees to her chest.
Is Jamie going to be okay?
He's strong. Fever needs to break, but he's fighting.
He's always been the fighter. Even when Mama was sick, Jamie would crawl into her bed and hold her hand, like he thought he could make her better.
Nathan's throat tightened. "How'd your mama pass?"
Consumption. Took her slow. Papa sold everything he could to buy medicine. That's when he borrowed from Wade.
Clara paused.
The medicine didn't work. Mama died in February. It was snowing then, too.
"I'm sorry."
Papa said sorry doesn't bring people back.
She looked at him.
But he said kindness keeps you going. That's why he trusted you. He said you were kind, even when you didn't want to be.
Nathan didn't know what to say to that. He'd spent 15 years convincing himself he wasn't kind, that he was just a man living alone on a ranch, minding his own business, keeping his head down. But Will Dawson had seen something different, and now Will's children were in his house because of it. "Your papa," Nathan said. "He was the bravest man I ever knew." Clara's eyes glistened.
He used to say the same about you.
Jamie coughed in his sleep. Nathan adjusted the blanket around him.
Nathan?
"Yeah?"
Those men, Wade's men, are they going to find us?
Nathan looked at her. This girl who'd walked through a blizzard, who'd carried her brother, who'd kept her sister alive, who'd found him across 100 miles of frozen wilderness. "Not while I'm breathing," he said. Clara nodded slowly.
Papa said you'd say that.
"Your papa knew me pretty well."
He said you'd try to do it alone, too. He said that's your biggest problem.
Nathan almost smiled. Almost. "Go to sleep, Clara."
Yes, sir. I mean, Nathan.
She went back to the room. Nathan sat by the fire, the letter in his hand, Jamie's breathing filling the silence. Outside, the wind howled and the snow kept falling, covering the world in white, hiding everything. The tracks, the blood, the 3 children who'd come to him with nothing but a dead man's boot, and the letter full of trust he wasn't sure he deserved. But the letter was in his hand, and the children were in his house. And somewhere out in the frozen dark, Garrett Wade was still breathing. Nathan picked up the boot, turned it over slowly. The leather was cracked, the sole split. Inside, faint stains, blood, probably Will's. He set it down carefully and pulled out a piece of paper. He needed help, couldn't do this alone, no matter what his pride told him. He thought about the war, about the men he'd served with. Most were dead or scattered, but a few were still out there, close enough to reach. He started writing. 3 letters, 3 names, men he trusted with his life. If they came, maybe they had a chance. If they didn't, Nathan didn't finish the thought. He folded the letters, tucked them into his coat, and looked at Jamie sleeping by the fire. Then he looked at the boot on the table, and the letter beside it, and the falling snow beyond the window. "I won't let you down, Will," Nathan whispered. "Not this time." The fire crackled. Jamie breathed. And the snow kept falling, quiet and relentless, burying the world and everything in it. Jamie's fever broke just before dawn. Nathan had been sitting beside him all night, changing the cloths on his forehead, spooning broth between his cracked lips, listening to every breath like it might be the last. When the boy's skin finally cooled and his breathing steadied, Nathan leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. His hands were trembling, but he didn't let himself rest. Not yet. Clara was awake before the sun came up. She appeared in the doorway of the back room, Lily behind her like a shadow, and looked at Jamie. "His fever broke," Nathan said. Clara's whole body sagged. She knelt beside her brother and pressed her hand to his forehead, checking for herself. Then she looked up at Nathan, and for the first time since she'd arrived, her eyes were soft. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. He did the fighting." Jamie stirred, opened his eyes. They were clearer now, still glassy but present. He looked around the room, confused, then saw Clara.
"Clara? I'm here, Jamie. Where are we?" "Somewhere safe."
Jamie's eyes moved to Nathan. He stared for a long moment, studying him the way only children can, direct, unafraid, searching for something they can't name.
"Are you the man from Papa's letter?" Jamie asked.
Nathan's chest tightened. "I am."
"Papa said you were brave."
"Your papa was the brave one." Jamie thought about that. Then he said, "I'm hungry." Clara almost laughed. It came out broken, half sob, half relief. But it was the closest thing to joy Nathan had heard in this house in 5 years. He stood up. "I'll fix something." He made porridge, simple, thick, with a little sugar he'd been saving. The 4 of them sat at the table together, Nathan at one end, Clara at the other, Lily and Jamie between them. Jamie ate slowly, his small hands gripping the spoon with effort. Lily picked at hers, but ate. She still hadn't spoken, but her eyes moved now, tracking things around the room. The rifle above the mantel, the coat by the door, the boot still sitting on the table. Nathan noticed her staring at the boot. He picked it up and set it on the shelf behind him, out of sight. Lily's eyes followed it, then went back to her porridge. "She saw something," Clara said quietly after breakfast, when Lily and Jamie were sitting by the fire. Clara was helping Nathan wash the dishes, something she'd started doing without being asked. "That night, when Papa told us to go to the cellar, Lily looked back. I think she saw them. The men." "She see what happened?" "I don't know. But she stopped talking after that. She used to talk all the time. Used to sing even. Mama's songs." Clara's hands stilled in the water. "Now she just holds that doll and draws." "Draws?" "With charcoal, on anything she can find. She draws the same thing over and over." "What?" "Fire." Nathan's jaw clenched. He looked through the doorway at Lily, sitting perfectly still, the rag doll pressed against her chest. 6 years old, and already carrying something no grown man should have to carry. "She'll talk again," Nathan said. "When she's ready." "How do you know?" "I don't. but I believe it." Clara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. She went back to the dishes. Nathan dried his hands and pulled on his coat. "I need to ride into town," he said. "Got letters to send and supplies to get." "You'll be all right here?" Clara's face tightened. "You're leaving?" "Just for a few hours. I'll be back before dark."
"What if someone comes?"
Nathan paused. He looked at her. 10 years old, carrying the weight of 2 siblings and a dead father, and a world that had already proven it wasn't safe. "Nobody knows you're here. Keep the doors locked. Stay away from the windows, and don't open the door for anyone but me."
"What if it's not you who comes back?"
The question hit him hard, because it was smart, because it meant she'd already thought about it. "Then you take Lily and Jamie out the back door and you run east, toward the creek. Follow it south until you reach a church with a crooked steeple. Ask for Reverend Whitfield. Tell him Nathan sent you. And if there's no time to run?" "There's always time to run, if you move fast enough." Clara didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Nathan grabbed his hat and his rifle, saddled his horse, and rode out into the cold. Elkhorn Creek was a 40-minute ride through open country, and the snow was deep enough to slow the horse to a walk in places. Nathan kept his eyes moving, scanning the ridgeline, checking the tree line, watching for tracks in the snow that didn't belong to deer or elk. He saw none, but that didn't mean they weren't there. The town was quiet when he arrived. A handful of buildings clustered along a single street: the general store, the saloon, the telegraph office, and the church at the far end, its steeple leaning slightly to the left. Snow was piled against the storefronts, and smoke rose from chimneys in thin gray columns. Nathan went to the telegraph office first. He sent the 3 letters: to Frank McAllister in Montana, to Elijah Tate in Colorado, and to Robert Harlan in Nebraska. He paid extra to make sure they went out fast. Then he walked down the street to the general store. The bell above the door jingled when he pushed it open. The warmth inside hit him like a wall. The store smelled of coffee, dried herbs, and kerosene. Behind the counter, a woman was stacking canned goods on a shelf. She turned when she heard the bell. Margaret Holt. Everyone in Elkhorn Creek called her Maggie. She was 38, a widow who'd taken over the store after her husband died in a mining accident 3 years ago. She ran it alone, kept it running through winters that shut down half the territory, and never once asked anyone for help. "Nathan Cole," Maggie said, surprised. "Haven't seen you in a month. Thought maybe you'd frozen solid out there." "Not yet." "What do you need?" "Flour, beans, coffee, salted pork if you've got it." He paused. "And some cloth, enough for children's clothes, 3 sets. Maggie's eyebrow went up. She set down the can she was holding and looked at him. "Children's clothes?" "That's right. Nathan Cole is buying children's clothes." "I am." She studied him for a long moment. Maggie Holt had sharp eyes, the kind that noticed things other people missed. She noticed when a man's hands were steady, but his jaw was tight. She noticed when someone asked for things they'd never asked for before. "How many children?" she asked. 3. "Ages?" 10, 6, and 4. "Boy or girl?" 2 girls and a boy. The boy's been sick. Fever broke this morning, but he's still weak. Maggie came out from behind the counter. She crossed her arms and looked at him the way she looked at everybody. Direct, no nonsense, measuring. "Whose children, Nathan?" He didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure how much to say, but Maggie wasn't the kind of woman you lied to, and she wasn't the kind who'd spread stories. "A friend's, from the war. He's dead. The children came to me." Maggie's expression softened, just slightly. "The Dawson place. The one that burned." Nathan's eyes sharpened. "How'd you know?" A freighter came through 2 days ago. Said there was a homestead north of here burned to the ground. Said the name was Dawson." She paused. "He also said Garrett Wade's men were seen in the area." Nathan said nothing. Maggie stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "Nathan, if Wade is involved in this, you need to be careful. He's got half the territory in his pocket. He's been buying claims all along the northern range. Anybody who doesn't sell gets squeezed until they break." "I know what Wade does." "Then you know he doesn't stop." "I know that too." Maggie looked at him for a long time. Then she turned, went to the back of the store, and came out with a bundle. Cloth, yes, but also wool blankets, a jar of honey, a small bottle of willow bark tonic for fever. "For the boy," she said, setting the tonic on the counter. "Willow bark in warm water, twice a day. It'll help." "How much for all of it?" "Don't insult me." Nathan shook his head. "Maggie, I can't. You can and you will. Those children didn't walk through a blizzard so you could argue with me about money." She pushed the bundle across the counter. "Take it. And if the boy gets worse, you bring him to me. I know a thing or two about sick children." Nathan looked at her. There was something in her face he hadn't noticed before. A firmness that wasn't just stubbornness, but something deeper. Like a woman who decided a long time ago that the world could be cruel, but she didn't have to be. "Thank you, Maggie." "Don't thank me. Just keep those children alive." He gathered the supplies and loaded them onto his horse. As he was tying the last bundle, a voice came from across the street. "Nathan Cole!" Nathan turned. A man was leaning against the post outside the saloon. Tall, dark coat, wide-brimmed hat pulled low. Nathan didn't recognize him, but he recognized the type. Hired muscle. The kind who carried a gun like it was part of his body. "Do I know you?" Nathan said. "No, sir, but my employer knows you." "And who's that?" The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Garrett Wade sends his regards. He heard you've been keeping to yourself out on that ranch. Thought you might be lonely. Thought maybe you'd taken in some company." Nathan's hand drifted toward his rifle, still in the saddle holster. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." The man pushed off the post and walked toward him, slow and easy. 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Walked out of a burned homestead about 5 days ago. Disappeared into the snow. Haven't seen any children. That's funny, because you just bought cloth for 3 sets of children's clothes. Nathan's blood went cold. He'd been watched. From the moment he walked into the store, maybe before. The man stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to draw. "Mr. Wade wants you to know he's a reasonable man. He doesn't want trouble. He just wants what's owed to him. Those children don't owe him anything. Their father did. And debts passed down. That's the law." "That's not the law. That's robbery." The man shrugged. "Call it what you want. Mr. Wade has a contract, signed and witnessed. William Dawson put up everything he had as collateral. His land, his property, and his family. His family isn't property. In this territory, with the right judge, it is." Nathan stared at him. The cold didn't touch him anymore. He was burning from the inside. "You tell Wade something for me," Nathan said. His voice was low, steady, dangerous. "Those children are under my roof, and anyone who comes for them is going to wish they hadn't." The man tilted his head. "Is that a threat, Mr. Call?" "It's a promise." For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind blew snow across the street between them. From inside the saloon, someone laughed, a distant, hollow sound. Then the man smiled again. "I'll pass that along." He tipped his hat. "Have a nice day, Mr. Cole." He turned and walked back toward the saloon. Nathan watched him go, his heart hammering, his hand still near the rifle. He didn't move until the man disappeared inside. "Nathan?" He turned. Maggie was standing in the doorway of the store, her arms crossed. She'd seen the whole thing. "That was one of Wade's men," she said. "Name's Polk. He's been in town for a week, asking questions." "About me?" "About everybody. But now he's asking about you." Nathan untied his horse and swung into the saddle. "I need to get back."
"Nathan, wait!" Maggie stepped off the porch and walked to him. She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't just concern. It was resolve. "You can't do this alone."
"I've been alone a long time."
"And look where it's got you." She put her hand on the horse's neck. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, those children need more than a man with a rifle. They need medicine, proper food, clothes that fit. They need someone who knows how to take care of them."
"I'm handling it."
"You're surviving. That's not the same thing."
The words cut because they were true. Nathan had been surviving for 5 years, feeding himself, keeping the ranch from falling apart, going through the motions of a life that had stopped meaning anything the day Ellen died. "I'll come out tomorrow," Maggie said. "Bring some things for the children. Check on the boy." "Maggie, if Wade's watching..."
"Let him watch.
"I've been running this store through 3 winters, 2 droughts, and a locust plague. Garrett Wade doesn't scare me." Nathan looked at her. This woman standing in the snow, chin up, eyes sharp, refusing to be afraid. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow." She nodded. "Be careful going home." He rode hard, pushing the horse through the drifts, watching every ridge, every tree line. The snow was falling again, lighter now, but steady. By the time he reached the ranch, the sun was low and the world was painted in shades of gray and white. He saw the smoke from the chimney first, then the light in the window. For a moment, something in him loosened, a knot he didn't know he'd been carrying. He dismounted, unloaded the supplies, and pushed through the door. Clara was at the table, sewing cloth into something that might become a shirt. Lily was by the fire, drawing on a piece of brown paper with a burnt stick. Jamie was sitting up, wrapped in a blanket, his color better.
"You came back,"
Clara said. "Told you I would." He set the supplies on the table. Clara's eyes went to the cloth, the food, the willow bark tonic.
"Someone helped you," she said. "This is too much for just a store."
"A woman named Maggie. She runs the general store in town. She's coming out tomorrow to check on Jamie." Clara's face tightened.
"Is that safe? Someone else knowing we're here?"
"She's trustworthy."
"Papa trusted people too."
The words stung. Nathan set down the last bundle and looked at her. "Clara, I know you've got every reason not to trust anyone, but I can't do this alone. Your papa knew that. That's why he sent you to me and not into the wilderness." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said,
"What happened in town?"
Nathan hesitated. He didn't want to tell her, didn't want to put more fear on a 10-year-old's shoulders. But Clara wasn't like other 10-year-olds. She'd earned the truth by walking through fire to get here.
"Wade knows you're alive," Nathan said. "He doesn't know where you are, not exactly, but he knows I bought supplies. He'll figure it out."
Clara's face went pale.
"How long do we have?"
"I don't know. Days, maybe. Maybe less."
"What are we going to do?"
"I sent letters to men I served with. Good men. If they come, we'll have a chance."
"And if they don't come?"
Nathan sat down across from her. "Then I'll figure something else out. But Clara, I need you to hear me. No one is taking you, Lily, or Jamie. Not Wade, not his men, not anyone. Do you understand?" Clara looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded.
From the fire, a small voice said, "Nathan." They both turned. Lily was sitting perfectly still, the burnt stick in her hand, looking at him. It was the first word she'd spoken since she'd arrived. Nathan's heart stopped. "Yeah, Lily?" She held up her drawing. It wasn't fire this time. It was 4 figures standing in front of a house. 3 small, 1 tall. And above them, she'd drawn something that might have been a star, or might have been the sun breaking through clouds. Nathan took the drawing carefully, his throat closed. He looked at this silent little girl who'd carried the sound of gunshots in her head for days, who'd walked through a blizzard holding a rag doll and her sister's hand, who hadn't spoken a word until now. "That's real nice, Lily," Nathan said. His voice was rough. "Real nice." Lily looked at him. Then, slowly, carefully, like a bird deciding whether to land, she smiled. Jamie coughed from his blanket. Clara started unpacking the supplies, and Nathan sat at the table, holding a child's drawing, feeling something shift inside him that he thought had died a long time ago. Outside, the snow kept falling. The wind pushed against the walls. And somewhere in the cold, Garrett Wade's men were circling closer. But inside this house, for the first time in 5 years, there was warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Maggie arrived the next morning before Nathan had finished feeding the horses. He heard the wagon before he saw it, the creak of wooden wheels cutting through fresh snow, the steady clop of hooves. He came around the side of the barn, rifle in hand, and stopped when he saw her. She was bundled in a heavy wool coat, her hair pinned tight under a dark bonnet, her cheeks red from the cold. The wagon was loaded, blankets, a crate of food, what looked like a small medicine chest, and a bundle of children's clothing she must have sewn through the night. "You said tomorrow," Nathan said. "It's barely sunrise." "I said tomorrow, didn't say what time." Maggie climbed down from the wagon and looked at him. "You going to help me unload, or just stand there holding that rifle?" Nathan set the rifle against the porch rail and started carrying supplies inside. Clara met them at the door, her eyes wary, her body positioned between the doorway and the room where Lily and Jamie sat. "Clara," Nathan said, "this is Maggie Holt, the woman I told you about." Maggie didn't rush forward, didn't try to hug the girl or fuss over her. She just stood in the doorway and said, "Morning, Clara. I brought some things for your brother. Mind if I take a look at him?" Clara studied her for a long moment, measuring, deciding. Then she stepped aside. Maggie went to Jamie first. She knelt beside him, pressed the back of her hand to his forehead, checked his eyes, listened to his breathing. Jamie watched her with wide eyes. "You're Maggie?" he asked. "I am." "Nathan said you're nice." Maggie glanced at Nathan. A flicker of something crossed her face. Amusement, maybe, or warmth. "Did he now?" Nathan turned away, suddenly interested in unpacking the crate. Maggie gave Jamie the willow bark tonic mixed with honey and warm water. She checked his throat, felt the glands in his neck, and asked him questions. When did the cough start? Did his chest hurt? Could he breathe deep without it catching? "He'll be all right," Maggie said, standing. "The fever's gone, but his lungs are still fighting. Keep him warm, keep him drinking, and don't let him run around for a few more days." "He doesn't run," Clara said from the corner. "He hasn't run since Mama died." Maggie looked at Clara. Something passed between them. A recognition, woman to woman, even though one of them was only 10. Maggie knew loss. You could see it in the way she held herself, in the steadiness of her hands, in the patience she carried like a second skin. "Your mama must have been a strong woman," Maggie said, "to raise a girl like you." Clara's chin trembled, but she held it. "She was." Maggie nodded. Then she turned to Lily,
who was sitting by the fire with her rag doll, watching everything with those big, quiet eyes.
"And who's this?" Maggie asked, crouching down. "Lily," Clara said. "She doesn't really—" "I like your doll," Maggie said softly. "Does she have a name?"
Lily looked at Maggie for a long time. Then, barely above a whisper, she said,
"Rose."
Clara's mouth fell open. Nathan froze. Lily hadn't said more than one word since she'd arrived, and now she'd said 2 in 2 days. Maggie smiled.
"Rose is a beautiful name. You take good care of her."
Lily nodded and pulled Rose closer to her chest. But she didn't look away from Maggie, and there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a tiny spark, fragile as a candle flame. Maggie stayed most of the morning. She cooked a proper meal, stew with salted pork and potatoes and carrots she'd brought from her own root cellar. The children ate like they hadn't tasted real food in weeks, which, Nathan realized, they probably hadn't. Clara ate 2 bowls. Jamie ate slowly, but finished everything. Even Lily cleaned her plate. While the children rested, Maggie and Nathan stood on the porch, talking low.
"That girl is holding those 2 together with nothing but willpower," Maggie said. "She's been their mother since they lost theirs. Maybe before."
"I know."
"She's 10, Nathan. She needs to be 10.
"I know that too." Maggie looked at him.
"And you need help. Real help. Not just supplies."
"I told you. I sent letters."
"Letters to men with guns. That's not what I mean."
She crossed her arms.
"Those children need stability. They need routine. They need someone who can hold them when they cry and teach them how to laugh again. You're good at protecting people, Nathan, but when's the last time you took care of someone?"
The question landed hard. He thought about Ellen, her voice, her hands, the way she'd made this ranch feel like a home instead of a building. Since she'd died, he'd kept the walls standing and the roof from leaking. But he hadn't taken care of anything. He'd just maintained what was left.
"I'm learning,"
he said quietly. Maggie's expression softened.
"I know you are. That's why I'm going to keep coming."
"It's not safe. Wade's got a man in town named Polk. He's watching." "Polk watches everybody. I've been watched by worse."
"Maggie, Nathan."
She said his name firmly, the way you say something when you're done discussing it. "I buried a husband. I ran a store through a winter that killed half the livestock in the territory. I've been threatened by drunks, cheated by suppliers, and robbed twice. Garrett Wade is a bully with money. I've handled bullies before." Nathan looked at her, standing there in the cold, arms crossed, jaw set, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. The unfamiliar, unsettling pull of not being alone. "All right," he said. "But you see Polk or anyone following you, you turn around. I'll decide what I do. But I appreciate the concern." She climbed back onto her wagon, gathered the reins, and looked down at him.
"Nathan?"
"Yeah? Those children are watching you, you know. Everything you do, everything you say. They're learning whether the world is safe by watching how you move through it." She drove off before he could answer. Nathan stood on the porch until the wagon disappeared into the white, her words sitting in his chest like a stone. That afternoon, Frank McAllister arrived. Nathan heard the horse and had his rifle up before he saw the rider. But the man who came through the snow was unmistakable. Tall, lean, weathered like old leather, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen every bad thing the West could offer. Cole, McAllister said, dismounting with the slow, careful movements of a man whose body had more miles on it than it should. "You got my letter?" "I did. Rode 2 days straight. Damn near froze my ears off." "You didn't have to come, Frank." McAllister tied his horse and looked at Nathan. "Will Dawson pulled me out of a burning supply wagon at Chickamauga. You think I'm going to sit in Montana while his children need help? Nathan exhaled. He led McAllister inside. The children looked up. Clara, alert, suspicious. Jamie, curious. Lily, hidden behind her rag doll. Kids, Nathan said. This is Frank McAllister. He served with your papa. McAllister removed his hat and looked at the three of them. His face, usually hard as granite, cracked. His eyes went glassy. Lord, he said softly, you look just like him. All three of you. Clara straightened. You knew our papa? I did, miss. He was one of the best men I ever rode with. Did you know our mama, too? I met her once. Your papa talked about her every single day. Said she had red hair and the strongest hands in 3 counties. Clara's eyes filled. She blinked hard and looked away. McAllister cleared his throat and turned to Nathan. Tell me everything. They sat at the table while the children settled by the fire. Nathan told him. The letter, the burned homestead, Wade's contract, the man called Polk in town, Wade's men already circling. McAllister listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every detail. How many men has Wade got? McAllister asked. 12, maybe more. Polk's one. There'll be others. And the contract? Claims Will put up everything, land, property, family, as collateral. That's not legal. Doesn't matter if he's got a judge who says it is. McAllister rubbed his jaw. 2 more coming? Elijah Tate and Big Rob Harlan, if they got my letters. Tate's reliable. Harlan's a wild card, but he loved Will. I know. We need a plan, Nathan. 4 men against 12 ain't great odds. I know that too. So what's the play? Nathan leaned back. Wade wants the land. Clara says her papa mentioned something under it. Minerals, maybe. Railroad easement. Whatever it is, Wade burned the house to send a message, but he's still looking. He needs the children because he needs to control the claim. If there's no heir, the land reverts to the territory and he can buy it for nothing. But if there's an heir, he has to deal with them, McAllister nodded. So the children aren't just in danger, they're leverage. Yeah. Then we need 2 things. We need to keep them alive, and we need proof that Will's claim is solid. Any deeds? Papers? Clara said Will had a tin box buried behind the barn. The barn that burned? Yeah. McAllister whistled low. That's a problem. Maybe not. If it was buried deep enough, the fire might not have reached it. You thinking about going up there? I'm thinking someone has to. Not you. Wade's watching you. I'll go. McAllister stood. I'll leave before dawn. Ride hard. If the box is there, I'll find it. Frank, if Wade's men are still at the homestead, then I'll deal with them.
Nathan looked at him. This old man who'd ridden 2 days through a blizzard without being asked, who was now volunteering to ride into hostile territory for children he'd just met. Why are you doing this, Frank? McAllister didn't answer right away. He walked to the fire and looked at the children. Jamie was asleep in Clara's lap. Lily was drawing again, not fire this time, but a horse. Because I owed your papa a life, McAllister said, not to Nathan, but to the children, even though they couldn't hear. And because some debts don't expire. He left before dawn the next morning, just as he'd said. Nathan watched him ride north until the snow swallowed him. Then he went inside and started the fire. 2 days passed. Elijah Tate arrived on the first day, quiet, lean, carrying a rifle that looked like an extension of his arm. He said nothing when he dismounted, just looked at Nathan and nodded. Tate. Cole. You came. You asked. That was the most Elijah Tate had ever said in one conversation. Nathan led him inside, introduced him to the children,
and gave him the guest chair by the window, the one with the best sightline to the front yard. Tate sat down, set his rifle across his knees, and didn't move for 3 hours. Big Rob Harlan arrived the second day, loud and enormous, his laughter announcing him before his horse did. He burst through the door like a storm, saw the children, and immediately dropped to one knee. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Will Dawson's babies. Look at you three." Jamie stared up at him, wide-eyed.
"You're big."
"That I am, son. And I'm friendly, which is a rare combination." He grinned at Clara. "Your papa ever tell you about the time I carried him across a river because he was too stubborn to admit he couldn't swim?" Clara's mouth twitched.
"No."
"Well, it's a long story. Involves a mule, a barrel of whiskey, and a very angry sergeant. I'll tell you later."
Even Clara almost smiled. That night, the 4 men sat around the table. McAllister hadn't returned yet, and Nathan was trying not to let that worry him. "Here's what we know," Nathan said. "Wade's got numbers. He's got money. He might have a judge. What he doesn't have is the land deed. If McAllister finds that tin box—" "If," Tate said. "If he finds it, we have proof that Will Dawson owned that land free and clear. The contract Wade's holding is built on a lie. You can't use someone else's land as collateral for a debt if the land isn't encumbered. And you can't claim a man's children as property." "You can if the judge says you can," Harlan said. "Then we go over the judge's head. Territorial governor." "That's a long shot." "It's the only shot." Harlan cracked his knuckles. "Or we could just shoot Wade and be done with it." "That makes us murderers." "That makes us heroes, depending on who's telling the story." "Rob." "Fine, legal way. But if Wade comes here with guns, I'm not waiting for a lawyer." Nathan nodded. "Fair enough." A knock at the door cut the conversation short. Everyone froze. Nathan grabbed his rifle. Tate was already at the window. "One rider," Tate said. "Woman." Nathan opened the door. Maggie was standing there, breathing hard, her face flushed. "Maggie, what?" "Wade's in town. He came in tonight with 8 men. They're at the saloon." Nathan's blood went cold. 8? "I counted. And he's not just passing through. He's asking about you, about the ranch, about the road out here." She paused. "He's coming, Nathan. Tomorrow. Maybe sooner." "How do you know?" "Because Polk came into my store an hour ago and told me to stay home tomorrow. Said there was going to be trouble on the road and he didn't want me getting hurt." Her eyes were blazing. "He said it like he was doing me a favor." Nathan looked back at the table. Tate, Harlan, 2 men plus himself. McAllister was still gone. 3 against 9. "Come inside," Nathan said. Maggie stepped in and saw the other men. She looked at Tate, then at Harlan. "These your letters?" she asked Nathan. "2 of them. 3rd one's still out." "Well, you better hope he gets back soon." Maggie set a bag on the table. "I brought ammunition, everything I had in the store." Harlan grinned. "I like her." "This isn't funny, Mr. Harlan. Robert Harlan. And you're right, ma'am. It's not funny." His grin faded. "But I've learned that if you can't laugh before a fight, you sure won't be laughing after one." Maggie looked at Nathan. "What's the plan?" "You're going home." "I'm not." "Maggie." "Those children are in that room." She pointed toward the back of the house, her voice low but fierce. 3 children who lost their father and their home and everything they've ever known. And you think I'm going to drive home and wait for news? You don't know me at all." Nathan opened his mouth to argue, but Clara's voice came from the hallway. "Let her stay." Everyone turned. Clara was standing there in her nightgown, Lily behind her, holding Rose,
Jamie peering out from behind Lily.
"Please," Clara said. "Let her stay."
Nathan looked at Clara, then at Maggie, then at the 3 children standing in the hallway, small and barefoot and afraid. And he realized something he should have understood from the beginning. He couldn't protect them by keeping people out. He could only protect them by letting the right people in. "All right," Nathan said. "You stay." Maggie nodded. She walked to the children, knelt down, and opened her arms. Lily went to her first. No hesitation, no fear, just a small girl who needed to be held. Maggie wrapped her arms around her and looked up at Clara over Lily's head. "I've got her," Maggie said. "You can rest." Clara's face crumbled. 10 years of being strong, of being the mother, of holding everyone together, and someone had finally told her she could stop. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her shoulders dropped and her hands unclenched, and she let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside her for months. Jamie tugged on Nathan's sleeve. "Nathan?" "Yeah, buddy?" "Are the bad men coming?" Nathan knelt down. He looked at this small boy with his blue eyes and his curly brown hair and his mother's courage. "Some men are coming," Nathan said. "But they're not going to hurt you, I promise." "How do you know?" Nathan put his hand on Jamie's shoulder. "Because your papa asked me to keep you safe, and I keep my promises." Jamie looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "Okay." He said it simply, completely, with the absolute trust that only a 4-year-old can give. Nathan's chest cracked wide open. He stood up, looked at Tate by the window, Harlan at the table, Maggie holding Lily, Clara standing in the hallway, Jamie beside him. "Everyone get some sleep," Nathan said. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Nobody argued. Maggie took the children to the back room. Tate stayed at the window. Harlan stretched out on the floor near the door with his pistol on his chest. Nathan sat at the table, alone, the letter in front of him. He read it one more time. "You're the only man I trust." He folded it and put it in his shirt pocket, close to his heart. Then he checked his rifle, loaded every chamber, and sat in the dark, listening to the wind and the silence and the sound of children breathing in the next room. McAllister was still out there somewhere. Wade was in town with 8 men. The snow was still falling. And Nathan Cole sat in the darkness of his kitchen, a dead man's letter against his chest, and waited for whatever was coming. McAllister came back at first light. Nathan heard the horse before he saw it. A slow, labored gait through deep snow. He was at the door with his rifle before anyone else stirred. When he saw the old man slumped in the saddle, blood frozen along his left sleeve, Nathan ran. "Frank." McAllister looked down at him. His face was gray, his lips cracked, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. But he was smiling. "Found it," McAllister said. He reached inside his coat and pulled out a tin box, dented and blackened with soot, but intact. "Buried 3 feet behind where the barn used to be. Had to dig through frozen ground with my hands." Nathan took the box and helped McAllister down from the horse. The old man winced when his boots hit the ground. "You're bleeding." "Ran into 2 of Wade's men at the homestead. They didn't expect company." "You kill them?" "One ran. Other one won't be riding for a while." McAllister leaned on Nathan's shoulder. "They know, Nathan. They saw the box. The one who ran, he'll tell Wade." Nathan got him inside. Maggie was already up, heating water. She took one look at McAllister and went to work, cleaning the wound, a bullet graze along his upper arm, wrapping it tight with clean cloth. "You're lucky," Maggie said. 2 inches to the right, and you'd have lost the arm." "Luck's got nothing to do with it, ma'am. I'm just too stubborn to die."
I can see that.
Maggie tied off the bandage.
Don't move that arm for 2 days.
Can't promise that.
I'm not asking for a promise. I'm giving an order.
McAllister looked at Nathan. Who is this woman? Maggie Holt. She runs the store in town.
She runs more than that, from what I can tell.
Maggie ignored them both and went to check on the children.
Nathan sat at the table and opened the tin box. Inside were papers, a land deed in William Dawson's name, a survey map of the property, and a folded document from the Territorial Land Office confirming mineral rights on the parcel.
Nathan stared at the mineral rights document. There it was.
The reason Wade had burned the house. The reason he'd killed Will Dawson. The reason he was coming for 3 children.
What's it say? McAllister asked, sitting down heavily. Will owned the mineral rights outright, bought them separate from the land deed before he ever took the loan from Wade. That means the loan contract couldn't touch them. Wade's collateral claim is worthless.
Wade knows that? Wade's known it all along. That's why he wants the children. If they're dead or gone, there's no heir. The rights revert to the territory, and Wade buys them for pennies.
McAllister let out a slow breath. So the contract was never about debt.
It was about getting Will to sign away something he didn't even know he was signing away. But Will was smarter than Wade thought. He kept the mineral rights separate. He buried the proof.
And now we've got it.
Now we've got it.
Harlan appeared in the doorway, his big frame filling the space. That's good news, but good news don't stop bullets. How long till Wade shows up?
Hours, Nathan said. Maybe less. His man at the homestead will have reached town by now.
Tate spoke from the window, where he'd been sitting all night. 9 riders, coming from the northwest, moving slow.
Everyone went still. Nathan stood and crossed to the window. Tate shifted to give him a view. In the distance, through the falling snow, dark shapes moved against the white. Riders in a line, deliberate and steady.
9, Nathan said. That's not all of them. Others might be circling, Tate said, coming from the south. Or he's holding some back. Either way, we're outnumbered.
Nathan turned to the room. McAllister was injured but on his feet, his good hand resting on his pistol. Harlan was already loading his rifle, his face set, all the humor gone. Tate hadn't moved from the window, steady as stone.
Frank, you take the roof. Bad arm or not, you can still shoot.
Damn right I can. Tate, you stay at the window. Pick your shots. Don't waste ammunition. Tate nodded once. Rob, you're at the back of the house. If they try to come around, you stop them. Harlan cracked his neck. They won't get past me. Nathan looked at Maggie. She was standing in the hallway, the children behind her. Clara's face was white. Lily was clutching Rose with both hands. Jamie was holding Maggie's skirt. Maggie, take the children to the cellar. I know. If you hear gunshots and then silence, you take them out through the cellar hatch and go east. To the creek, then south to Reverend Whitfield. Clara already told me. Nathan looked at Clara. The girl looked back at him, those old eyes steady and burning. Nathan, Clara said, don't die. His throat closed. He knelt down, eye level with her. I'm not planning on it. Papa wasn't planning on it either.
The words hit him like a bullet.
Because she was right. Will Dawson hadn't planned on dying. He planned on surviving, on raising his children, on paying his debts and living his life. And it hadn't been enough. Nathan took Clara's hand. Your papa didn't have what I have. What's that? Friends with guns and a reason to fight. Clara almost smiled. Almost. Then she took Lily's hand, picked up Jamie, and followed Maggie down the cellar stairs. Nathan watched them go, and something in him hardened.
Not anger, not fear, but something older and deeper. A resolve that went all the way down to the bone. He turned back to the room. "Let's go." Nathan stepped onto the porch as the riders entered the yard. The snow had eased, and the morning light was thin and gray. The riders spread into a wide arc, 9 men, all armed. Garrett Wade was in the center, mounted on a black horse. He wore a long, dark coat, his hat pulled low, and his face was calm. The face of a man who'd done this before and expected to do it again. Wade dismounted slowly. He stood in the snow, looking at Nathan with pale eyes that held no warmth and no hurry. "Nathan Cole," Wade said. His voice was smooth, measured, like a man reading terms of a contract. "I hoped we could settle this without trouble." "You brought 9 men to my door. That's not settling." "Insurance," Wade smiled thinly. "Surely you understand." "I understand you murdered a man and burned his home, and now you want his children." "That's a dramatic way to put it." "That's the truth." Wade tilted his head. "Truth is a flexible thing out here, Mr. Cole. What matters is what's written on paper, and who has the authority to enforce it. I have a signed contract." "Your contract is worthless, and you know it." Something flickered in Wade's eyes. The first crack.
I beg your pardon? William Dawson's mineral rights were purchased separately from the land deed. They're not covered by your loan agreement. Never were. You built your whole play on a lie, Wade. And I've got the documents to prove it. Wade's jaw tightened. The men behind him shifted in their saddles. "You're bluffing," Wade said. "Try me." Those documents were in a tin box behind the Dawson barn, a barn that no longer exists. The box was buried 3 feet underground. Fire doesn't reach that deep. Nathan held up the tin box. "Your men should have dug harder." Wade stared at the box. For the first time, his composure cracked. His hands clenched at his sides. The mask of civility slipped, and underneath it was something raw. Fury, calculation, desperation. "That changes nothing," Wade said. But his voice was different now. Harder, less smooth. "A piece of paper doesn't mean anything if there's no one alive to present it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Nathan set the box down on the porch rail. "I've already sent copies to the territorial governor. I sent them yesterday, by telegraph. Every word. Description of the deed, the mineral rights, your forged contract, and a detailed account of what happened to William Dawson. By the time you ride back to town, the governor's office will have everything." Wade's face went white. Nathan watched him. Watched the moment the man realized his plan had a hole in it, and the hole was getting bigger. It was a bluff. Nathan hadn't sent anything to the governor. There hadn't been time. But Wade didn't know that, and the fear on his face said he believed it. "You're lying," Wade said, but the certainty was gone. "You willing to bet your future on that?" Wade looked at his men. They looked back at him, waiting for orders. But something had shifted. They'd signed up to intimidate a lone rancher, not to fight a legal battle with the territorial government. "Here's what's going to happen," Nathan said. "You're going to ride out of here. You're going to withdraw every claim on the Dawson property. And you're going to leave these children alone. And if I don't, then the governor gets a letter with your name on it, detailing murder, arson, fraud, and the attempted enslavement of 3 orphaned children. And I don't think even your judge can make that disappear." Wade stood there, breathing hard. The snow fell between them, soft and steady. The silence stretched. Then one of Wade's men, the one called Polk, spoke up. "Mr. Wade, maybe we should—" "Shut up." "Sir, if the governor—" "I said shut up." Wade took a step toward Nathan. His hand moved toward his coat.
Nathan's grip tightened on his rifle. "I wouldn't," Nathan said quietly. "You think you've won?" Wade's voice was low, shaking with rage. "You think a piece of paper and a bluff changes anything? I own this territory. I own the law. I own the land under your feet. You don't own those children, and you don't own me." Wade reached for his gun. The shot came from the roof. McAllister's rifle cracked through the cold air, and the bullet hit the ground at Wade's feet, spraying snow and frozen dirt. Wade stumbled back. His men reached for their weapons. "Next one goes through your chest," McAllister called from above. "And I don't miss twice." Tate appeared at the window, his rifle trained on the nearest rider. Harlan came around the side of the house, his shotgun leveled at the group. "You're surrounded, Wade," Nathan said. "You've got 4 guns on you and nowhere to go. Your men can see that, even if you can't." Wade looked around, his face twisted. He looked at his men. They looked back at him, and one by one, Nathan saw it happen. The decision, quiet and quick, passing from man to man. They weren't going to die for this. Polk was the first. He raised his hands slightly, palms out. "I ain't dying for a contract dispute." Another rider turned his horse. Then another. Then 3 more. They peeled off like leaves in a wind, riding back the way they'd come. Not fast, not panicked. Just done. Wade watched them go. His face collapsed, not into fear, but into something worse. The understanding that power, once it starts to crack, can't be held together. 3 men remained, Wade and 2 riders who either were too loyal or too stupid to leave. "It's over, Wade," Nathan said. "Go home." Wade's eyes burned. He looked at Nathan with pure hatred, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that lives in a man's bones. "This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. You can't protect them forever. You're one man." "I'm not one man. I never was." Wade stared at him. Then something broke in his face. Not defeat, exactly. More like the realization that he'd miscalculated. Not the guns or the papers, but the thing he'd never accounted for. The thing that couldn't be bought or burned or taken. He mounted his horse. The 2 remaining riders fell in behind him. He looked down at Nathan one last time. "You'll regret this." "I've regretted a lot of things in my life. This won't be one of them." Wade pulled his horse around and rode out, the 3 of them cutting a dark line through the white snow. Nathan watched them go. He didn't lower his rifle until they were past the ridge and gone from sight. The silence that followed was enormous. McAllister climbed down from the roof, wincing, his bad arm pressed against his side. Tate stepped out onto the porch, his face unchanged, as if the whole thing had been no more remarkable than watching weather. Harlan came around front, the shotgun over his shoulder, grimming. "Well," Harlan said, "that was something." Nathan set his rifle against the wall. His hands were shaking now, not during, only after. Somebody opened the cellar. He went to the cellar door and pulled it open. "It's over. You can come up." Maggie came up first, her face tight with tension. Then Clara, carrying Jamie. Then Lily, clutching Rose, her eyes wide.
"Is he gone?"
Clara asked. "He's gone."
"Is he coming back?"
Nathan looked at her. He wanted to say no, wanted to give her that certainty, that clean, simple answer a 10-year-old deserved. But Clara had earned the truth. "I don't think so," Nathan said. "We've got the deed. We've got the mineral rights. His contract doesn't hold. And his men just walked out on him."
"But you don't know for sure."
"No, but I know this. If he comes back, we'll be ready. And he'll find the same thing he found today. People who won't back down." Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded.
Okay.
Jamie squirmed in her arms.
Can I get down?
Clara set him on the floor. He walked over to Nathan, looked up at him and said,
Did you keep your promise?
Nathan knelt down. I did, buddy.
Good.
Jamie held out his hand, small, warm, open.
Papa said, when a man keeps his promise, you shake his hand. Nathan's eyes stung. He took Jamie's hand and shook it, gentle but firm.
Your papa taught you right, Nathan said. Lily tugged on Maggie's sleeve. Maggie looked down. Lily held up a new drawing. 4 stick figures with guns standing in front of a house, and behind them 3 smaller figures. Above everything, she'd drawn a line of dark shapes riding away.
That's us?
Maggie asked. Lily nodded.
You draw real good, sweetheart.
Lily leaned into Maggie and closed her eyes. Maggie put her arm around her and held her close. That night, they ate together, all of them around the table, which wasn't big enough, so Harlan sat on a crate, and Tate leaned against the wall with his plate. Maggie cooked, and for once, nobody argued about who was in charge of the kitchen. McAllister told stories from the war. The clean ones, the ones with humor and courage and friendship. Harlan added details that might or might not have been true, and even Tate cracked something that could almost be called a smile. Clara sat between Nathan and Maggie. She didn't say much, but she ate and she listened, and once or twice, Nathan caught her watching the room with an expression he hadn't seen on her face before. Something soft and wondering, like she'd forgotten what it looked like when people gathered around a table because they chose to. After supper, Nathan stepped onto the porch. The night was cold and still. The snow had stopped, and for the first time in days, stars were visible. A wide, glittering sweep across the black sky. Maggie came out and stood beside him.
You bluffed him, she said. About the governor.
Nathan didn't answer.
You didn't send anything by telegraph. There wasn't time.
No.
So he could come back.
He could, but he won't.
How do you know?
Because his men saw him lose, in front of witnesses.
A man like Wade, his power comes from people believing he can't be beaten. Once they've seen him back down, they won't follow him the same way. The fear's broken. Maggie was quiet for a moment.
And if you're wrong, then I'll send the real documents to the governor tomorrow and make it official.
You should do that anyway.
I will. They stood in silence, looking at the sky. Nathan could feel her beside him, the warmth of her, the steadiness. She didn't lean on him, didn't need to. She just stood there, solid and certain, the way she stood through everything.
Nathan,
Maggie said.
Yeah? What happens now, with the children?
He'd been thinking about that. All day, through the confrontation, through the fear and the relief and the noise of it all. One question had been sitting in the back of his mind, quiet and patient, waiting for the guns to stop. They stay, Nathan said.
For how long?
For good. Maggie looked at him.
You sure about that? Will asked me to keep them safe. That doesn't have an expiration.
Keeping them safe and raising them aren't the same thing.
I know, but they need a home, and this is one.
It's a ranch with 1 bed and a back room full of saddles.
I'll build more rooms.
You'll need help.
I know. Maggie turned to face him.
Nathan Cole, are you asking me something?
He looked at her. This woman who'd driven through a blizzard with medicine and ammunition, who'd held Lily when she needed holding and told Clara she could rest, who'd stood in his kitchen and fed his household and refused to leave when leaving was the smart thing to do. I'm not good at asking, Nathan said. I'm better at building things and hoping people show up.
That's a terrible strategy.
Yeah, it is. Maggie smiled. It was small, just a slight lift at the corners of her mouth, but it changed her whole face.
"I'll be here tomorrow," she said, "and the day after that."
"And we'll figure the rest out as we go." Nathan nodded. Something inside him, something that had been frozen for 5 years, longer maybe, started to thaw. "All right," he said, "as we go." Maggie went back inside. Nathan stayed on the porch for a while longer, looking at the stars, listening to the sounds coming through the door. Harlan's laughter, Clara's voice asking McAllister about the war, Jamie's small, bright questions, and somewhere beneath it all, a sound so quiet he almost missed it. Lily was humming. A melody, soft and slow. One of the old songs Clara had mentioned, the kind their mother used to sing, the kind their father sang when he thought they were sleeping. Nathan closed his eyes and listened to it. This small, fragile sound floating out into the cold night air, filling the space between the walls, between the people, between all the broken things that had somehow come together in this house. He put his hand on his chest, where Will's letter sat against his heart, and he stood there until the song was finished, and the silence that followed was the good kind, warm and full and alive. McAllister, Tate, and Harlan left the following week. They waited until Nathan had ridden into Elkhorn Creek and sent the real documents to the territorial governor's office. The deed, the mineral rights, a sworn statement about William Dawson's death, and a formal complaint against Garrett Wade. The telegraph operator took one look at the stack of papers and whistled low. But he didn't ask questions. Nathan paid him double to make sure every word went through. When he got back to the ranch, the 3 men were packed and ready. McAllister shook Nathan's hand with his good arm. The wounded one was still wrapped tight, but the color had come back to his face. "You need anything, you write. Don't wait 15 years this time." "I won't." McAllister looked toward the house, where Clara was standing in the doorway with Jamie on her hip. "Take care of those kids, Nathan. Will would have wanted that more than anything." "I know." Tate said nothing. He just nodded, touched the brim of his hat, and mounted his horse. That was Elijah Tate's version of a heartfelt goodbye, and Nathan understood it perfectly. Harlan was the hardest to let go. He stood in the yard, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the snow, and looked at Nathan with eyes that were surprisingly gentle for a man his size. "You know," Harlan said, "when I got your letter, I almost didn't come. Thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. Then I remembered Will pulling me out of a trench at Cedar Creek when everybody else had run. He didn't even know my name yet. Just grabbed my collar and dragged me." Harlan paused. "Some people come into your life and change the shape of it. Will was that for me. And now you're that for those kids." Nathan didn't trust his voice, so he just gripped Harlan's hand hard. "You ever need a man who can lift a horse?" Harlan said, grinning. "You know where to find me." "Can you actually lift a horse?" "Almost. Once. The horse disagreed." Harlan laughed, that big, building-shaking laugh, and mounted up. He tipped his hat toward the house. "Bye, Clara. Bye, Jamie. Bye, Miss Lily." From the doorway, Jamie waved with his whole arm. "Bye, Big Rob." Harlan rode off, still laughing, and Nathan watched the 3 of them disappear over the ridge. 3 men who'd come because a dead friend's children needed them, and who left, knowing they'd done what they came to do. The ranch was quiet after that. Not the tense, watchful quiet of the days before, but something softer, a settling quiet, the kind that comes after a storm passes and the world starts breathing again. Nathan started building. He didn't plan it, just woke up one morning, looked at the back room where 3 children were sleeping on blankets between old saddles, and picked up a hammer. He tore out the storage shelves first. Then he framed a partition, creating 2 spaces, one for Clara, one for Lily and Jamie. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Clara watched him work,
handing him nails when he needed them, holding boards steady.
"You know how to build things?" she asked.
"Some things. My wife taught me most of it."
"You had a wife?"
"Ellen. She died 5 years ago." Clara was quiet for a moment.
"What was she like?"
Nathan drove a nail in, slow and straight. "She was the kind of person who could make any place feel like home. Didn't matter if it was a cabin or a tent or the back of a wagon. If Ellen was there, you were home."
"You miss her?"
"Every day." Clara handed him another nail.
"I think she would have liked us."
Nathan stopped hammering. He looked at Clara, this girl who'd carried her siblings through a blizzard, who'd buried her childhood in a root cellar, who was standing here now, handing him nails like they'd been doing this for years. "Yeah," Nathan said. "She would have." Maggie came out to the ranch every other day. She brought food, clothes she'd sewn, books she'd borrowed from the church. She checked on Jamie's lungs, which were clearing slowly, and she sat with Lily, teaching her how to stitch simple patterns into cloth. Lily didn't talk much, but she talked more. Short sentences, whispered questions, and once a small laugh when Maggie pricked her own finger and said a word that wasn't fit for church. One afternoon, Nathan came in from the barn and found Maggie in the kitchen, reading aloud to all 3 children from a book of frontier stories. Jamie was on her lap. Lily was beside her, leaning against her arm. Clara was on the floor, her back against the wall, her eyes closed, listening. Nathan stood in the doorway and watched. Something about the scene stopped him. The warmth of it, the simplicity. 4 people in a room, a voice reading words, and for a few minutes, nobody was afraid. Maggie looked up and saw him. She didn't stop reading, but something passed between them. A look that said more than either of them would have been comfortable saying out loud. Nathan hung up his coat and sat down at the table, and he listened too. Spring came slow. The snow pulled back inch by inch, revealing brown earth and green shoots pushing up through the frost. The creek behind the ranch thawed, filling the air with the sound of running water. Nathan fixed fences, tended the horses, and started clearing a patch of garden for a garden, something he hadn't done since Ellen was alive. Clara helped him. She had strong hands for a 10-year-old, and she wasn't afraid of dirt or hard work. She asked questions constantly about the soil, the seeds, the horses, the war. Nathan answered them all, sometimes with words, sometimes by showing her. "Papa never taught me about gardens," Clara said one morning, pulling weeds beside him. "We moved too much." "Your papa had other things to teach you." "Like what?" "Like how to survive, how to keep your brother and sister alive, how to walk 100 miles through the worst weather in the territory and not quit." Nathan looked at her. "Those are harder lessons than gardening." Clara's face softened. "I guess so." "And I'll teach you the garden part." She smiled. A real smile, not the almost smile she'd been giving since she arrived. A full, open, 10-year-old smile that made Nathan's chest ache in the best way. Jamie got stronger every week. His cough faded, his color returned, and by the time the snow was gone, he was running. Actually running across the yard, chasing the barn cat, falling down, getting up, falling again. He talked constantly, about everything, to everyone. He asked Nathan about the horses, about the war, about the stars, about why snow was cold, about whether dogs could talk to each other, about what was inside a rock. Nathan answered every question, even the ones he didn't know the answers to. "Nathan, why do birds fly south in winter?" "Because it's warmer." "But why don't we fly south?" "Because we don't have wings." "But
What if we did?
Then I reckon we'd fly. Jamie thought about that. I'd fly to where Papa is. Nathan's throat tightened. He pulled Jamie onto his lap and held him. Your Papa's not that far away, buddy. He's right here. He touched Jamie's chest, over his heart. Right there. Jamie looked down at his chest, then back up at Nathan. Is Mama there too? Yeah, she's there too. Is it crowded? Nathan almost laughed. Almost cried. No, son. Hearts have plenty of room. Jamie leaned against him, satisfied. Good, because I want you in there too.
Nathan held him tighter and didn't say anything for a long time. Lily bloomed the slowest, but she bloomed. She started talking more. Full sentences sometimes, though she still preferred drawing. Maggie brought her colored pencils from the store, and Lily filled pages with pictures. Horses, trees, flowers, the ranch, the people in it. She drew Nathan with his hammer. She drew Clara in the garden. She drew Jamie chasing the cat. And she drew Maggie, always Maggie, with her hair pinned up and her arms open. One evening, Lily brought a drawing to Nathan. She stood beside his chair holding it out, not saying anything. Nathan took it and looked at it. It was a family. 2 tall figures and 3 small ones standing in front of a house. Above them, in shaky letters, she'd written a word. Home. Nathan looked at Lily. She was watching him with those big, quiet eyes. Eyes that had seen fire and death and fear, and that had somehow found their way back to trust. "This is beautiful, Lily," Nathan said. His voice was rough.
It's us, Lily said. I know. Can we put it on the wall? Yeah, we can. He hung it above the mantel, right where the rifle used to be. The rifle went to the corner. The drawing stayed. A letter came from the territorial governor's office in late spring. Nathan opened it at the table, with Clara reading over his shoulder, because she'd earned that right. The letter confirmed that all claims against the Dawson estate had been officially dismissed. The mineral rights were secured in trust for William Dawson's surviving children. Garrett Wade had been investigated and charged with fraud, extortion, and arson. He'd fled the territory before marshals could arrest him. He's gone? Clara asked. He's gone. For good? He's a wanted man now. If he comes back, he goes to prison. Clara read the letter again, slowly, as if the words might change. Then she set it down and looked at Nathan.
"We're really safe?" "You're really safe." She didn't cry. Clara Dawson didn't cry. Not anymore. Not where people could see. But her hand found Nathan's arm, and she held on for a moment. Just a moment. And that was enough. That summer, Nathan asked Maggie to marry him. He did it badly, standing in the store, a bag of flour in one hand, the words coming out sideways and tangled. Maggie, I've been thinking. Dangerous habit for you. I'm serious. She set down the can she was holding and looked at him. All right, I'm listening. You've been coming out to the ranch almost every day. Cooking, teaching, helping with the children. You brought Lily back to talking. You taught Jamie his letters. You made Clara believe she could be a kid again. I did those things because they needed doing. I know, but I'm asking you to stay. Not just a visit, to stay. Maggie was quiet for a long time. She looked at him. Really looked at him. The way she'd looked at him that first day in the store. Measuring, deciding. Nathan Cole, she said. I've been waiting 3 months for you to say that. Is that a yes? That's a yes. They were married in the church in Elkhorn Creek, Reverend Whitfield officiating. Clara stood beside Maggie in a blue dress she'd sewn herself. Jamie carried the rings on a pillow and only dropped them once. Lily held Rose in one arm and Maggie's hand in the other. The whole town came. Wendell from the old store closed up for the day. The telegraph operator brought a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving.
Even a few ranchers who Nathan had never spoken to rode in, tipped their hats, and wished them well. After the ceremony, Clara found Nathan standing alone by the church steps.
"Nathan?
Yeah?
Can I ask you something?"
Always. Clara took a breath.
"Can we, me and Lily and Jamie, can we call you something different?"
Nathan looked at her.
"Like what?"
Clara's eyes were bright, fierce, full of everything she'd been carrying since that first night on his porch. Like Pa, Nathan's vision blurred. He pressed his hand over his eyes and took a breath that shook his whole body. 5 years of silence. 15 years of guilt. A dead man's letter in a boot. 3 children in the snow. And now this girl, this brave, unbreakable girl, standing in front of him, asking if she could call him father. "Yeah," Nathan said. His voice cracked, and he didn't care. "Yeah, Clara, you can call me that." Clara threw her arms around him and held on. Nathan held her back, and he felt it. The last wall. The one he'd built around himself when Ellen died. The one he'd reinforced with years of loneliness and whiskey and silence. Come down.
"Pa,"
Clara said into his chest, just testing the word, feeling how it fit. It fit perfectly. Years passed. The ranch grew. Nathan added rooms, a bigger barn, a proper kitchen. Maggie turned the house into a home. Curtains on the windows, flowers on the table in summer. The smell of bread in the air. She ran the store and the ranch with equal authority, and nobody in Elkhorn Creek dared cross her on either front. Clara grew tall and strong, with her father's red hair and her mother's steady hands. She could ride better than most men in the territory by the time she was 15, and she had a mind for numbers that impressed the schoolteacher so much he wrote a letter to a woman's college back east. Clara went, studied, came back, and opened the first bank in Elkhorn Creek. Jamie grew into his father's blue eyes and his mother's kindness. He became a veterinarian, the only one for 100 miles, and he traveled the territory tending to horses and cattle and the occasional stubborn mule. He married a teacher's daughter from town and built a house not far from the ranch. Lily never stopped drawing. She went from burnt sticks on brown paper to oils on canvas, studying with a painter who passed through town one summer and recognized her gift. Her paintings hung in galleries in Denver and San Francisco. Landscapes of the Wyoming frontier, portraits of the people she loved, images of a world she'd nearly lost and had fought to keep. She never forgot the fire, but she learned to draw other things. One autumn afternoon, years later, all 3 of them came home. Clara with her husband and 2 daughters, Jamie with his wife and infant son, Lily with a portfolio of new paintings and a quiet smile that still made Nathan's heart crack open. They sat on the porch, Nathan and Maggie side by side, the children and grandchildren scattered around them, the land stretching wide and gold in the afternoon light. Jamie's oldest daughter ran across the yard, chasing a butterfly. Jamie called after her, "Don't go past the fence," and for a moment, just a moment, Nathan heard Will Dawson's voice in his son's. Clara noticed. She put her hand on Nathan's arm. "You all right, Pa?" "Yeah, just remembering." "Papa?" "Yeah." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He'd be proud of all of this." Nathan looked at the ranch, the house he'd built, the family that filled it, the land that Will Dawson had died to protect and that his children had lived to inherit. "I think about him every day," Nathan said. "Every time Jamie laughs, I hear him. Every time Lily draws, I see him. Every time you stand up for somebody who can't stand up for themselves, Clara. That's your papa." Clara's eyes glistened.
And every time someone keeps a promise, she said, that's you.
Maggie reached over and took Nathan's hand. He held it. This hand that had bandaged wounds, sewn clothes, held children, built a life beside his when he'd given up on having one. Thank you, Nathan said. Not to Clara, not to Maggie,
Not to anyone in the yard. He said it to the wind, to the sky, to a man who'd written a letter and stuffed it in a boot and trusted it to reach the right person. That evening, after everyone had gone inside, Nathan sat on the porch alone. The sun was setting, painting everything in amber and gold. He reached into his shirt pocket, the same pocket where he'd carried the letter for years, and pulled it out. The paper was soft now, worn thin along the creases. The ink faded. But the words were still there. Keep them safe, please. You're the only man I trust. Nathan folded the letter and pressed it against his chest. He closed his eyes and let the evening settle around him. The sound of his family inside. Maggie's voice, Clara's laughter, Jamie's questions, Lily humming one of those old songs, the ones their mother used to sing. He sat there until the stars came out and the night turned cold, and the world was still. Then he stood, put the letter back in his pocket, and went inside. He closed the door against the cold. Maggie looked up from the table and smiled. Jamie climbed into his lap. Lily showed him a new drawing. Clara poured him coffee. And Nathan Cole, the man who'd spent 15 years running from a debt he thought he could never repay, sat down at a table full of people who loved him, in a house that was finally a home, and understood at last that some promises don't end when they're kept. They become the life you were always meant to live.